So, this is The Legend of Zelda, a Super NES game from the 90s, which is a 2D open world where Link basically runs around, fight things, collect things, and carries out missions and so on. So, this playlist is going to be about how we're going to make a 2D open world game where you get to collect things, but it can't be like Legend of Zelda because of all the copyright issues and legal stuff. So, let's get started. So first of all, you'll need to open up the Unity Hub, and this is what it looks like. Now yours won't look like this because you won't have any things actually made up to this stage. But actually, when you open up the Unity Hub for the first time, it'll ask you to sign up with a Unity ID and this and that. I'm sure there's someone helpful enough around who can show you how to do that if you have problems with it. But anyway, once you've signed up and you come back to it, this is what it looks like, and this will be blank. So you will need to click on New Project and you will then choose from all templates. It kind of chucks you down here sometimes, so just make sure you click on all templates. And because we're doing a 2D open world kind of walking around type of game, we're going to 2D built-in render pipeline. Now, the project name and where you save it, you'll need to decide. So this is just going to go in my area here. You can obviously decide where it's going to go, but keep an eye on where it's going to go first and foremost, just so you know where it is. And the project name, I can't call it Legend of Zelda because that's obviously copyrighted. So I'm going to give it a different name because my game's going to be nothing like Legend of Zelda at all. So mine's going to be called The Myth of Esmeralda. I think that's how you spell it. So I'm going to click create project. Now, after a couple of minutes, while this is kind of kicking in, something called the Unity editor will load up and it will be a slightly different icon to this. In fact, it's the inverse of this one. Might take a few minutes to get there, but it will look like this. So this is what the Unity editor looks like when it loads up. It might have taken you a few minutes to get to this stage like it did with me. So over on the left-hand side, we've got something called the hierarchy, and there's this plus sign where you can add things to your scene or your stage. Now, this scene is currently called sample scene. You can keep it called that if you want, or you could just double click on it. And in fact, I think I might have to do something down elsewhere to change it. Now, down in the bottom, you probably won't have packages, but this is where when you bring things in, they will appear in your assets area. And where it's got scenes, when I open that up, you can see sample scene is there. And I will have other scenes on there at some stage, like a game over scene, you win scene, that type of stuff. So I'm just going to click back on assets so that looks like it does. Now, we've also got these tools. So this is basically about the hand tool, I think it's called the hand tool, allows you just to click and drag that around. Move tools, when we put something on there, we'll be able to move things around. So it's probably best if I show you these when we get bits and pieces in. But at this stage, we've got the main camera. And when I click on the main camera, you can actually see what our kind of game looks like. And in fact, if I click on game here, that's what our game will look like on screen with this blue background. So first things first, if I actually click away from anything selected in hierarchy, you'll notice there's an inspector on the right-hand side. Nothing there at the moment, but this is basically the properties. So if I click on the main camera, we get all these kind of bits and pieces appearing in terms of the position of the camera, its rotation, so you can kind of rotate it around if you want to, scale, etc., etc. And you can kind of scroll up and down through these things and play around them if you want. But the one thing I want to point out at this stage, I'm not happy with a blue background like that. So if I wanted to change it, I would just simply click on this, choose a color, move this around, and as you can see, because we got the main camera selected, it's actually showing us what that color looks like. And potentially I can adjust the opacity, and potentially, if you already know the hexadecimal code for the color you want, you can just type it in. And another thing which is quite nice, this little kind of eye drop, I think that's what it's called. If you click on that and hover over things, you'll notice that it's changing here as I'm hovering over things. So if you've got something on you think, oh, I really like that background color, or that as a background color, I don't know what it is, you basically use that to click on it and it will basically pinch that color and use it for you. At the moment, yeah, it's just gone to grey background. To be honest, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to press enter to get off this. Now, if I wanted to, if I click on the plus sign here over in hierarchy, I can actually add objects to my game. So it's 2D objects, 3D objects. You might be thinking, well, this is a 2D open world game, so why would I open up put a 3D object in there? Now you can, but the only thing is, with a 3D object, just the same as if we put a 2D object in there, you would be limited to only moving X and Y because it's a 2D game. If you wanted to make a 3D game, then you'd have to kind of close this down and open up a new project within the Unity Hub to get a 3D game going. But more importantly at this stage, let's just quickly add in 2D object. And if I go to sprites and you've got the kind of shapes to choose from. So if I click on square, there's the square, and you can see over on the right hand side, that's what it's called there. So if I wanted to give it a name like player, if that was going to be my player, and I can adjust the position, I can adjust the scale, or I could use these tools, like I said earlier, to move it around, to rotate there. And if I wanted to, I could scale it as well. And if I just grab, I think the middle part of it, you can actually scale it together, or you can just stretch it out, so it's like that. So I've just shown you that's what some of the things you can do with these tools. Now, I actually use the rec tool quite a bit because it allows you to resize things, allows you to click on it. You can do quite a few of those things just by using that tool. Anyway, I don't want the square, so I can either press delete on the actual scene to get rid of it, or I can right click on square here and press delete so it's actually taken off altogether. What I do want to do is actually add an asset which I've already got made, so my player, and there he is, Chicken2. And the chicken 2 now appears in the assets. And if I wanted to, I could have a look at these settings here. But I'm actually just going to drag and drop him up onto our scene. And you'll see it appears over here as chicken 2, chicken 2. Now, it's not, this is going to be our playing character, by the way. Now, I can't call it Zelda because obviously I'm not making a Legend of Zelda game. So I'm going to call it, it's not Zelda, it's Link, actually, the main character. So I'm going to call him Clink because he's a chicken. So that's our player's name as it is across there. Now, the other thing I want to point out is at the moment, if I just go to game, that's what it looks like on screen. And if I press play at the top to actually play my game, it'll load up. It just does a little bit of a kind of setup thing. And no matter what I do on my keyboard, I can't actually get it to move because I haven't coded it at this stage. Now, another thing you might want to look at is the scale. So I'm knocking it down to 2, and there's other bits and pieces for you to look at here if you really want to. Now, I'm still playing, so the blue kind of is highlighted up on the play sign. So any editing I might do to this won't save until I actually press play. So I'm not playing the game, and then I can edit things if I need to. So if you notice you make a change, and then you think, oh, nothing actually, it didn't work, it's probably because you had play selected there at the top. Anyway, I've done a lot of talking at this stage. We haven't actually got our character to do anything, but what I am going to do is add something called a collider, and I'm just going to click on or type in collider. And as I do that, you see all these different colliders appear. Now we have to use the ones which say 2D on them. If they don't have 2D, these are for 3D games. And in fact, at this stage, I'm going to click on a box collider. And you'll notice that this kind of green thing appeared around in there. And if I double click on Clink, it actually zooms in. And this box collider now is added to our inspector or properties for our player. And there's bits and pieces I can change on here. Now, you might be using this at some stage, but just to point that out. But you can also edit this collider because clearly at this point, my player, we don't really want it to be a kind of registering its wings. We don't want to be registering the head pieces and stuff like that. So that's just to show you that you can kind of edit the collider. Now, the other thing I want to add to this as well is something called a rigid body. So if I scroll down again and click on Add Component, type in rigid, and again, look, there's a rigid body and there's a rigid body 2D, must be the 2D one. And you'll notice, and I can kind of minimize these if I want to, on the rigid body, you'll see it's got all these bits set in on the gravity scale of 1. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is because when I press play, just like anything which has got gravity associated with it, it drops down. And that's something which is pre-built in. So what I'm going to do is actually change that gravity scale so it is 0, so it doesn't move anywhere. And if I press play, you'll see that it doesn't actually move at all. And you might be thinking, well, what's the point in adding a rigid body in the first place if you don't want it to drop? Now, the reason why we add a rigid body is because when we do a bit of coding to make this player move, if it doesn't have a rigid body on it, it just won't shift anywhere at all. And then the only other thing I want to do in this video, I'm just going to double click on my main camera to zoom back out. I'm just going to click away from it. I'm also going to add, I would say like a floor, because this is supposed to be like a 2D, I suppose, top-down open scene. So I want to add a ground to it. So this, I'm not going to bring a graphic in for this one. I'm actually going to make use of the 2D objects. And I'm going to pop a square on there. I'm going to choose kind of a suitable green. I think that'll do for the time being. It's not the best, but yeah, like I said, that'll do for the time being. And I'm going to use the scale tool to scale it up so it basically covers the camera and is quite big like that. And then I'm going to use that to put my buildings, enemies, collectibles, stuff like that as well. Now, I'm also going to name it because it says square there, and I'm going to call it ground. And you might have noticed, but we can't see Clink anymore because Clink is behind this. Easy way to fix it. On the sprite renderer for each of your things which you've added on, you'll notice it says order and layer and 0. And I can see Clink, but he's actually behind this. Now, they're both order and layer 0, but they kind of get put into order in the order in which you put them on. So, because Clink went on first and then the ground went on second, naturally the ground goes on top of him. So, to fix it, I can either change Clink's ordering layer so it is higher than 0. Or what I like to do is actually change the ground so it's actually -1, and there's our player there. So I can click on game to see what it looks like on screen. Bit of a horrible shade of green, so I might change that at some point. I think we should actually start getting to the point now where we get our player to move.